Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I had a great time talking with Dylan last week about what he does and the things that he's been seeing and doing and kind of gleaning some expertise for parents and for this time right now. And so this week I thought I'd bring on my lovely wife, Jordan, who's in a similar field, not a school counselor, but a mental health counselor, therapist, works a lot with kids. So I thought it'd be great to have her on and just talk about kind of glean her expertise about kids and this time. And so, Jordan, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of
And
course.
obviously, we get to talk about this stuff a lot. So I'm excited to share your expertise with everyone else. Just for those of people that don't know you, why don't you start off and just tell us, a little more about what you do and how that looks kind of day to day, especially during this time.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a professional counselor at a private practice in Hamden. It's called Terra Counseling and Consulting. So I moved with Gavin to Baltimore about 2 years ago, and I've been working at Terra for a little over a year at this point. And before that, I worked for Catholic Charities at their Villa Maria Family Services Clinic. So I kind of split my time there as both a school-based mental health therapist and then working in their outpatient mental health clinic. Um, and then before we moved to Baltimore, I counseled adults and families, adolescents, children at a counseling private practice in St. Louis. So at Terra, I see kids, teens, families, and adults for, just a wide range of issues that people are dealing with, such as anxiety, depression, trauma, attachment difficulties. So if, a parent and a child are, having difficulties in their relationship with one another and their ability to like attach and bond with one another, that would be kind of the attachment difficulties. And I work with adoption struggles and emotional regulation and grief and life adjustments. So I also have training, advanced training in two different interventions. One's called trust-based relational intervention, and the other one's called TheraPlay. So because of those trainings, I do a lot of work with kids and families who come from adoptive backgrounds and kids who have histories of trauma. TBRI and TheraPlay, they're both really holistic interventions, and they're really seeking to heal the wounds of trauma through, especially developmental trauma, through fostering deeper connections and attachments within families.
Yeah, so that's a lot. That's what's thing I think is cool about your work is you get to do so many different kinds of things, so many different kinds of families, all the way from foster care and adoption to just teens or kids or parents struggling with anxiety and depression, or just feeling off. I mean, it just sounds like, and just from knowing you, obviously, you get to do a lot of broad ranging things, which is pretty cool. So really excited to have you come on. What are you seeing right now that is, maybe different from what you were seeing before, and particularly with families, as are trying to talk to families here. So what are some things that families you might be expecting to see if they haven't already, and what kind of things do you usually kind of share with them when they come to see you?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, during the coronavirus, the way we've done counseling has kind of moved to an online format. So that's looked pretty different lately. So typically with kids, I utilize a lot of play. But with the coronavirus, I haven't been able to, be one-on-one with them. And it's kind of hard to do that
Yeah.
in a telehealth format. So that's looked more like working more with parents at this point, and just kind of touching base with them and really helping to empower them and help them structure what's going on. So yeah, I think like a lot of what I'm seeing with parents are that they're struggling with a tremendous amount of stress and pressure. The daily structures and routines of our lives have been totally thrown off right now, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to impact the whole family unit. So on top of that is the added stress of some parents losing their jobs, parents having to work from home, while balancing parenting and other demands at home, or maybe like the fear of loved ones getting sick or the fear of them getting sick. So I'm seeing parents deal with the pressures of having to wear just multiple hats in a new way. So now they're parent, their teacher, their principal, and their playmate all in one.
Mm.
So that's a lot of pressure for parents. And they're feeling the pressure to make sure their kids stay on top of schoolwork and so they don't fall behind academically. And I mean, that's just the parents. Kids during this time were totally thrown off by um, their usual structure being taken away, on top of having to deal with the losses that they're experiencing too by not being in school, or being able to do things like sports or other extracurricular activities.
Mm.
I think kids are feeling really restless, they're bored, they're anxious and sad. It's just a lot. And, I mean, change is hard for everyone, especially for kids. And like with this, nobody was able to prepare for this. So I think, we're
Yeah.
just seeing scrambling. We're scrambling to figure out how to adjust while we're dealing with, just the roller coaster of emotions, both for the parents and for the child.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like that's what everyone's been saying, is that it's just so much change. The kids don't really have there's no routine, there's no structure, there's a lot of ambiguity. Um, and so I guess one of the things that might be helpful then is to talk about what parents should be aiming for. I mean, what does success look like? I mean, that's obviously like a loaded question. It's going to be different for every family, but what kind of bar should they be setting for themselves? I feel like it'd be easy for parents to think, I'm doing a horrible job because the kids are going crazy, I'm going crazy. What would you say would be, how can we redefine that for people to make it feel like a little more manageable?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, some of the things that I'm telling, like, and talking to parents about is, just having a firm, like creating routine and predictability.
Mm.
So I think, like, to varying degrees, we can say that the coronavirus has left us all feeling with a sense of being out of control. Um, and so when we're feeling out of control, it's really normal for us to act out in a place of fear, especially for kids. So in order to calm some of those fear responses, we have to establish a sense of felt safety.
Okay, establish a sense of felt safety. Now, what is that?
Yeah, so felt safety. So, I mean, obviously we know that in with our kids that our kids are safe. We know that on a cognitive level. But there's kind of there's a difference between knowing we're safe and then feeling safe. So felt safety is that kind of internalized sense of like, I'm okay. My
Okay.
environment feels safe and my environment feels predictable. So yeah, so we can kind of look at that felt safety and establish some of that by holding intention the balance of structure and nurture. And so I wrote a blog post about this on Tara's website, and that goes more in depth about this. But basically, we want to have both high structure and high nurture. And so implementing that would look like creating predictability and consistency through things like routines and structure, schedules. We don't want to be rigid about that, but because sometimes our plans need to flex, and sometimes our kids need that, sometimes we need that, and we don't want to be rigid about that. But we want to establish regular, predictable events during the day to really create a sense of normalcy for our kids. And so we can do that through things like morning and bedtime rituals. We can do that through regular meal times, establishing times when we do homework or chores. And maybe that might look like planning an activity to do together. Not having to like plan out the entire day, but just having
Right.
like one or two things that you're going to do, like going on a walk or playing a game or watching a TV show or movie. And then we can combine that with high nurture by, adding those pieces of connection to that. So I also written another blog post about this on Tara's website that kind of goes into the different elements of connection. So we can really integrate that nurture piece whenever we bring warmth and compassion and humor to our interactions with kids. So things like eye contact or tone of voice or safe physical touch and playfulness can go a long way in connecting with our kids. So like that might look like when you're doing an activity together, maybe you're looking at them with like delight in your eyes and you're just like expressing like, oh, I'm really happy to be with you right now. Or that could look like when when they finish like doing their schoolwork, like maybe you give them a high five or like, give them a pat on the back or something like that, where you're kind of getting some of that physical touch.
So really, you're talking about the bar being more about structure and nurture. Am I hearing that right? That like when we
Sure, I
think
think
about what look, how we can measure if everything, obviously it's going to be crazy, but to kind of give ourselves a sense of like, okay, we're doing okay here as long as there's some structure in place and there's a high level of nurture and the kid is feeling, or kids are feeling safe.
sure, I think that's part of it. And
Okay.
I think, a huge part of where we set the bar is it's just so contextual for every family, and no family is the same. So we want to be able to create sustainable rhythms, and we want to hold both those pieces of structure and nurture. And, we want to find ways to connect as a family. And that doesn't have to be every minute of every day, but we want to find those moments during the day when we can connect with one another. And I think this really depends, on the parent and the child and the relationship you have, and the different personalities of the parents and the child, or children. So we all react, you know, in times of stress, we react to that differently. So I might, like, when it comes to setting, where are we like setting the bar, I think I would ask a parent, like, what does that look like for you when you're
Mm.
like in your reaction to stress? So for some of us, like, maybe our response is with that we want to control. So maybe we're setting the bar too high. Maybe we're expecting too much out of ourselves and our kids. So maybe that might look like rigidly creating structure or order, and like holding so tight to that it just creates like a lot of anxiety. So for those parents, I might encourage them to lower the bar and have more grace on themselves, and to think about more about plans, like in terms of like creating like flexible plans, I guess.
Mm.
So instead of planning out the entire day, maybe doing like one, two, three things, and then finding ways to soothe yourself when you're feeling out of control. And some of that comes back into that emotional regulation piece. So what helps you calm yourself? Um, so maybe find ways to do that by like going on a walk, talking to a friend or something like that. But then maybe there are some of us that err on the side of setting the bar too low. So maybe like these might be the parents that are better at play and nurture, but have a harder time setting limits or putting structures in place.
Mm.
So, I might encourage those parents to create some routines and structures to help your kids feel a sense of order and predictability. Um, and, maybe you're just having a really hard time connecting with your kids at all. And, maybe you're finding yourself losing yourself in like endless social media scrolling, and you're struggling to want to engage at all. And so I might encourage those parents to reach out to someone they trust. And also, I'll say I'm not talking about just getting annoyed at your kids every once in a while.
Mm.
That's going to happen. We're all cooped up with one another. But if you feel like you never want to spend time with your family or with your kids, that might be a sign of something else going on.
Mm.
So I might, encourage that parent to reach out, to talk to someone about that. Because the
Is
thing is,
that
none
kind
of
of
us are.
is that the point when you would say just like find a friend, find a good person in church, or are you talking about like maybe you need like some therapeutic assistance at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think either. I think you could reach out to a friend, and if you're getting encouragement from them, maybe that this is goes a little bit deeper, or you might need further resources to be able to help support you, then that might look like finding a therapist during this time. Like, I know telehealth, that's really accessible right now, especially for adults.
Mm. Yeah, totally. So it's like almost easier than ever to do therapy in that sense because you can just do it right from your house.
Totally.
But how would a parent know, like, this is more than a friend thing? Like, I should probably go do the telehealth.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I would tell a parent, like, it's really important that we're tuning into how we're doing. Um, so even like none of the things that I'm kind of talking about right now are going to be doable if they're not taking care of themselves.
Mm.
Um, and so I think it's kind of going back to, what are their reactions to stress. How are they handling that? Like, are they, maybe thinking about the intensity of their reactions. So maybe if they're getting like really upset or really angry, yelling a lot at their kids, just feeling really out of control in their body or something like that. So maybe that might be more on the, like, maybe they're feeling more of the anger or more of the just sense of being out of control, that fear and panic. I think, and then when it comes to maybe like excessive worrying or thought or fearful thoughts, or maybe just like ruminating on and they can't get ideas out of their head, and like, or they're not getting sleep at night, and it's really affecting their day-to-day activities, I guess I would say. Or even things like unexplainable bodily pain, like headaches or stomach aches, things like that, or feeling like especially withdrawn, or feelings of sadness or hopelessness. Things like that can be good indicators that it might be time to see someone. And the thing is, like, you can always reach out to, like an intake coordinator at like a private practice, or to a therapist. A lot of therapists offer like 15-minute consultations. So it'd be good to kind of bounce that off of them. Just to kind of get a feel for, like, do they think that it would be good for you to see them?
Yeah, that's a good thought. And the other thing that hits me too is you did mention that website earlier where you posted some blogs. Could you just give that to folks so they can find those resources?
Yeah, totally. Let me make sure I'm giving the right one.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's just at tarabaltimore.com.
Okay, tarabaltimore.com. So definitely go check that out if you want to follow up with Jordan's work, and if you're interested more in hearing some of those thoughts that she shared earlier. And I guess last question, Jordan, what a lot of people and parents, myself included, when we've gone to counseling, we didn't really know what we were getting into. We didn't know what this was. What should a parent expect if they're going to counseling, whether it's for themselves or for their kid? How should they approach that process? Because I feel like that was pretty disorienting for me and for a lot of folks, for the first time.
Sure. So is there something in particular that you're kind of asking about with what to expect? Because right now, I think it's going to look pretty different than it kind of would typically, just with the coronavirus and things being online now. So,
I guess oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just thinking, like, it's easy to, or, you're going to you're especially meeting on something online. If it's health care over the internet now, you're meeting somebody new for the first time. They're supposed to help you with, whatever's going on. You're going to kind of share them all these deeper issues, problems going on. It's a kind of a vulnerable experience. And I feel like it would have benefited me, and I've heard other people say the same thing, just to know what I should be expecting from that interaction on the front end. And it doesn't have to be, just any thoughts on that. Should I approach it with an attitude of like, this is going to be a long-term thing or a short-term thing, or what kind of relationship do I don't want to ask too many questions in one, but that's kind of, that's the general thought.
Sure. I think it's hard to know, like, offhand, especially without knowing like people's stories or what they're coming in with, like how long to say that therapy would take, or maybe for what them to expect. So I think that depends on the person. I think your therapist could give you more of an idea of, once they hear your story a little bit, and what they, I guess, like, whenever it comes to like the timeline of how long you'd be in therapy, you might be able to get a better idea of that. Because some people, I think, come in, and have a very particular thing that they're wanting to work through. Maybe there isn't a lot of trauma in their background. Maybe there's not a lot of things that they need to work through in terms of like family history, family of origin stuff. But I think like those type of things are probably going to take a little bit longer to kind of work through, especially the older we get. But I think, so that's kind of the adult side, I guess, with things. And then maybe they're coming in with just, one thing that they're like, this is happening in my life, which, you can probably expect to kind of dig into some of those family of origin and just trying to kind of make connections between past and present. I think this also kind of depends on just the style of the therapist and their background and how they do therapy. So that's also, I think, is another factor. And then with kids, similarly, I think it depends on the trauma history of the child, what they're going through. Did they have like one maybe trauma that happened that you're coming in with, or is there layers? Was there developmental things that happened that has kind of impeded like growth and progress? So I think there's just a lot of factors in that, of things that you can kind of have going into therapy, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anything else lots of other questions I could ask, but anything else you'd want to just share with parents before we say goodbye?
Yeah. I think just hang in there, guys. We're all in this together, and it's hard, and this is just a really difficult time. So, yeah.
Totally. Awesome. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah. Thank you.